Ron shook his head, wide-eyed. Hermione, however, clapped her hand to her forehead. Harry, I think I've just understood something. I've got to go to the library. And she sprinted away up the stairs. What does she understand? Said Harry, distractedly, still looking around, trying to tell where the boys had come from. Lots more than I do, said Ron, shaking his head. But why she got to the library? Because that's what Hermione does, said Ron, shrugging. When in doubt, go to the library. Harry stood irresolute, trying to catch the boys again. But people were now emerging from the great hall behind him, talking loudly, exciting through the front door on their way to the Quidditch pitch. You'd better get moving, said Ron. It's nearly 11 the match. Harry raced up to Gryffindor Tower, collected his Nimbus 2000, and joined the large crowd swarming across the grounds, but his mind was still in the castle, along with Bodil's boys, and as he put on his scarlet robes in the locker room, his only comfort was that everyone was now outside to watch the game. The team walked on the field to tumultuous applause. Oliver Wood took off for a warm-up flight around the goalposts. Madame Hooch released the balls. The Hufflepuffs who played in Canary Yellow were standing in a huddle having a last-minute discussion of tactics. Harry was just mounting his broom when Professor McGonagall came half marching, half running across the pitch, carrying an enormous purple megaphone. Harry's heart dropped like a stone. This match has been cancelled, Professor McGonagall called through the megaphone, addressing the packed stadium. There were boos and shouts. Oliver Wood looked dispirited, landed, and ran toward Professor McGonagall without getting off his broomstick. But, Professor, he shouted, we've got to play the Cup Gryffindor. Professor McGonagall ignored him and continued to shout through her megaphone. All students ought to make their ways back to House Common Rooms, where their heads of house will give them further information. As quickly as you can, please. Then she lowered the megaphone and beckoned Harry over her. Potter, I think you'd better come with me. Wondering how she could possibly suspect him this time, Harry saw Ron detach himself from the complaining crowd. He came running up to them as they sat forward to the castle. To Harry's surprise, McGonagall didn't object. Yeah, perhaps you'd better come too, Weasley. Some of the students swarming around them were grumbling about the match being cancelled. Others looked worried. Harry and Ron followed Professor McGonagall back to the school and up the marble staircase. But they weren't taken to anybody's office this time. This will be a lot of shock, said Professor McGonagall in a supremely gentle voice as they approached the infirmary. There has been another attack, another double attack. Harry, inside, did a horrible somersault. Professor McGonagall pushed the door open and he and Ron entered. Madame Pomfrey was bending over a 6-year girl with long curly hair. Harry recognized her at Gryffindor. They accidentally asked for directions to the Slytherin common room. And on the bed next to her was Hermione. Ron groaned. Hermione lay utterly still, her eyes open and glassy. They were found near the library, said Professor McGonagall. I don't suppose either of you can explain this? It was on the floor next to them. She was holding up a small circular mirror. Harry and Ron shook their heads, both staring at Hermione. I'll escort you back to Gryffindor Tower, said Professor McGonagall heavily. I need to address the student in any case. All students will return to their house common room by 6 o'clock in this evening. No student to leave the dormitories after that time. You will be escorted to each lesson by a teacher. No student is to use bathroom unaccompanied by a teacher. All further Quidditch training and marches are to be postponed. There will be more evening activities. The Gryffindor packed inside. The common room listened to Professor McGonagall. In silence, she rolled up the parchment from which she had been reading and said in a somewhat choked voice, I need hardly add that I have rarely been distressed. It is likely that the school will be closed unless the culprit behind this attack is caught. I would argue anyone who thinks they might know anything about them to come forward. She climbed somewhat awkwardly out of the portico, and the Gryffindors began talking immediately. That's 2 Gryffindors down, now counting a Gryffindor ghost on Ravenclaw and 1 Hufflepuff, said the Weasley twins' friend Lee Jordan, counting on his fingers. Haven't any of teachers noticed that Slytherin are all safe? Isn't it obvious all this stuff coming from Slytherin? The hair of Slytherin, the monster of Slytherin. Why won't they just chuck all the Slytherin out? He roared. No nods and chatter applause. Percy Weasley was sitting in a chair behind Lee, but for once he didn't seem to make his views harder. He was looking pale and stunned. Percy's in shock, George told Harry quietly. The Ravenclaw girl, Penelope Clearwater, she's imperfect. I don't think he thought the monster would dare attack a perfect. But Harry was only half listening. He didn't seem to be able to get rid of the picture of Hermione lying on the hospital bed as he was looking at a lifetime back in the Dursleys. Tom Riddle, Miracle Orphanage. If the school closed, Harry now knew exactly how he had felt. What are you going to do? Said Ron quickly in Harry's ears. Do you think they suspect Hagrid? We've got to go and talk to him, said Harry, making up his mind. I can't believe it's him this time, but if he set the monster loose last time, he'll know how to get inside the Chamber of Secrets, and that's a start. But McGonagall said we've got to stay in our tower unless we're in class. I think, said Harry more quietly still, it's time to get my dad's old clock out again. Harry had inherited just one thing from his father, a long and silvery invisibility cloak. It was their only chance of sneaking out of the school to visit Harry without anyone knowing about it. They went to bed at the usual time, waited until Neville, Dean, and Seamus had stopped discussing the Chamber of Secrets, and finally fallen asleep. They got up, dressed again, and threw the cloak over themselves. The journey through the dark and deserted castle corridors wasn't enjoyable. Harry, who had wandered the castle at night several times before, had never seen it so crowded after sunset. Teachers, prefects, and ghosts were marching the corridor in pairs, staring around for any unusual activity. Their invisibility cloak didn't stop them making any noise, and there was a particularly tense moment when Ron stopped his toe only yards from the spot where Snape stood standing guard. Thankfully, Snape sneezed at almost exactly the moment Ron saw. It was with relief that they reached the oak front door and eased them open. It was clear, starry night. They hurried to the lit windows of Hagrid's house and pulled off their cloak. Only when they were right outside his front door, second after they had knocked, Hagrid flung it open. They found themselves face to face with him, aiming a crossbow at them. Fang, the barhound, barked loudly behind them. "Oh," he said, lowering the weapon and staring at them. "What are you two doing here?" "What's that for?" said Harry, pointing at the crossbow as they stepped inside. "Nothing, nothing," Hagrid muttered. "I've been expecting. Doesn't matter. Sit down. I'll make a tea." He hardly seemed to know what he was doing. He nearly extinguished the fire, spilling water from the kettle on it, and then smashed the teapot with a nervously at the windows. He poured them both large mugs of boiling water. He had forgotten to add his tea bags, and was just panning a slab of fruitcakes on a plate when there was a loud knock on the door. Hagrid dropped the fruitcake